All right, welcome back. So last time we did a video on how to use ChatGPT to write a Python script to organize some files. And that was the first in a series of videos on basically how to use ChatGPT to be a scripting engine for you. And I have found it to be simply amazing for basic tasks, like almost like system and file management tasks. And what we did last time was we were kind of looking at, imagine you have a set of media files. You have photos, videos, like stuff that's accumulated over the years sitting around your house. And at least what I found is they end up in kind of just a grab bag of directory structures, formats, etc. And in making them available through Plex, I wanted a slightly better organization structure for those files. So in the last video, we started off by using ChatGPT to write a simple script to just deduplicate the files. And it was a simple use case, right? Because I know for me, I just like let copies of the files kind of accumulate as I download archives from different cloud providers. So this time we're actually going to go a bit deeper and we're going to write the script to do the actual organization of those files. So it's going to be very simple, similar to last time, where this will be more of a live streaming type format. I don't have it all planned out. I've played around with some of this in the background, but we're going to figure this out on the fly, and we're going to use ChatGPT in front of us to help us. And we will generate scripts, we'll modify them, and just basically see what the workflow is like. Before I get started, I wanted to show you that in actually doing a tiny bit of prep for this video, what I wanted to do was kind of generate a test data set that we could work with. And I have on my NAS like 4 terabytes of files, and there was no way like I could bring that over to my developer desktop and it would take forever to run those scripts. And I wanted to kind of do a fast turnaround while writing this video. So ChatGPT and script writing to the rescue again. And just, in the last few minutes, I kind of pulled the script together to help do some quick prep work for this video. And what I asked to do is write a Python script to basically sample files from an input directory. And I asked it to retain the same relative directory hierarchy. And so basically I could take my 4 terabyte directory tree and trim it down to just a few thousand. And it was awesome. So here we go. I just wrote the prompt, got the script. Now I have a test data set to work with for this video. So obviously, I'm a pretty big fan of this, of using these tools to generate code for little maintenance tasks. So why don't we jump in and let's get this thing organizing some files. Why don't we start by looking at the test data we're dealing with? So remember, I sampled about 5,000 files out of 4 terabytes, but at least it retains some of the directory structure, so it'll give you a sense of kind of what we're dealing with. And so we'll see it here. And so I'll go into the test data folder, and you can see I have top level, just random collection of directories. I have an iCloud download. I have like backups from a couple iPhones. I don't know where mobile backups came from. And then this pictures and videos tree is something that I used to maintain years ago, like long before the era of smartphones. And I would be really good about organizing stuff into like directories named with dates and what was happening, etc. But even this started to get messy over time, because in this, I have like videos separated. This is back before this started, before OneDrive was called OneDrive and it was called SkyDrive. And I had backups from that. And there are videos mixed in with this, photos, etc. So you can see, and there's duplicates. The way I would approach this is first, I would deduplicate the entire tree using the script we did last time. And then what I would do is use the script we're going to develop this time to actually go through and organize this into a new structure. So that's roughly what the test data looks like. Your mileage may vary, but I'd be willing to bet people have a whole mess of files as well. Why don't we get to crafting this script? So we'll go over to ChatGPT. Now, again, I'm going to use the O1 model like I did last time, just because that is the most advanced reasoning model. So we'll switch to O1. And I actually did do one thing. I wrote down the prompt. So I was pretty specific about what I wanted. So here's what I'll do. I'll just drop the prompt in and I'll walk through it with you to kind of show you what I want to get out of this script. So let's read through the prompt. So I say, write a Python script to organize a directory tree of photo and video files. The script should traverse an input directory tree and copy the files to an output directory with a new structure. The new structure should organize files by date, with each folder in the output directory being a date of the format 4 years, month, day. I'm going to modify this. I actually just want the output to be by month. And then I say, when scanning the input directory, the script should figure out the date associated with each file. It should first look at the path of the input file and look for date formats of that and that. So basically year, month, day with dashes or like entirely compressed together. If it can't find a date in the path, it should use the file creation date. So I know from looking at some of the test data, I did not do a good job organizing it. And I'm pretty sure, I don't know if kind of the iPhone downloads actually have dates in this format at all. That's fine. So if it can't find the date in the path, it should just use the file creation date. The script should include a dry run feature that shows files that would be copied that doesn't do anything. And then the script should also run a verification of the count of the files in the original directory and the output directory and print a confirmation that the counts match. This information should not be printed during a dry run. So if you watch the last video, there were a couple gotchas that we ran into where when you ran the script with the dry run capability, it had some strange artifacts in the output it printed. It wasn't anything breaking, but I just wanted to be more specific in kind of how I craft this prompt as to explain what I wanted out of the script. And I guess this is where you get into learning prompt engineering a little bit. And before we actually run this, I want to look at something. So like I tell it to figure the date associated with each file by looking at the path and looking for these date formats. I actually don't think, now that I think about it, that may not be inclusive because I might have some directory tree structures where you have year as a directory and then month as a subdirectory and so on. But you know what? We will save that for a modification later. So why don't we just start with this and see what it comes up with. So let's let it go. All right, let's see what it says. It creates a Python script. It recursively walks to the input directory, attempts to parse a date. Yep, it uses the file's creation date. It organizes, copies the files into an output directory under folders named. That makes sense, has a dry run feature. Got it. By the way, this is something in kind of just playing with script generation using ChatGPT. Kind of pattern I've kind of found myself getting into is making sure the scripts are non-destructive because I don't test ideal software engineering. I would ask this thing to write unit tests. I would run the tests. I'd feel very good about it. Since we're just doing this for fun, not a production environment, but it is data I do care about. I always have copies of the data and I always like ask it to write the scripts in a non-destructive way. Maybe a best practice there. So let's take a quick look at the script it wrote. So yep, parses the arguments, input and output directory, dry run. Here's where it extracts the date from the path. It has two patterns, right? It looks for that. Patterns make sense. Okay, so here you can see, like, remember I asked it to basically write a checksum? And you can see here's where it's counting the files in each directory. So again, I just said to do a basic count. I didn't say to do any kind of formal checksumming. As dry run mode. Pretty cool. So it wrote the script and then it explains how it works. I like that because again, I'm just skimming this and I find this to be a bit much to consume. I'd have to really sit and read this, but it gives me a nice explanation of what it does. Formatting the output path. Once we have a date time, we convert it to the string format. I'm going to tell you, I know there's one thing it does wrong because in playing with this on the side, I found a gotcha in this is it will gladly parse a path looking for a date, but it doesn't actually check if the date is reasonable, right? So like this is just looking for a pattern. This is something that if you were kind of writing this from scratch, you might think that through. You'd be like, oh, wait, I'm going to parse this out and see if the date makes sense. So we will just put that as a note and maybe we'll come back to it and add that as a feature. All right, so let's take the script and we'll drop it in here and give it a try. All right, so first we'll do the dry run and see what it does. And just skimming this, I won't go through all of it. This actually makes sense. So looks in iCloud, figures out. You can see this is actually one of the problems I potentially called out. So in the iCloud directory, this was the date I downloaded from iCloud, but this was not the date of the photo, right? You can see the date of the photo here, and it would move it to that in the output. Okay, good enough. We can kind of try to fix that in rewriting the script. So we'll just go ahead and run this without the dry run and see what happens. All right, so what's interesting is, so it said it gave a warning that the counts don't match. I'm guessing there's a bug in that. I think it would be able to, we'll check that. So in output, right, 4956. Of course, it didn't tell me what was different. I guess we have to add that as a feature as well. I'm not good. So let's go into the output and see how it organized things. Looks pretty reasonable. So all the directories are as I specified, you know, a year and a month. And there's actually no crazy directory names as I anticipated. And that could just be a function of the test data. So if I look in for January 2025, a whole bunch of random stuff in there. Not horrible, but why don't we go back and see if we can make some adjustments to the script to correct a few of the errors we caught. So first of all, on the error count not matching, I'm going to ask it to figure it out and see if rather than telling it to like calculate a difference or something else, I'm going to try to be a little more high level with kind of my ask and modifying the script and see what it does. So let's try this. So this is super high level. When the file counts between the input and output directories don't match, explain why. It'll be interesting to see what it comes up with. So what's interesting is it didn't actually modify the script. I was expecting it to add something to the script, but great. So it gave a bunch of reasons, duplicates, which is probably exactly what's happening. So I'm going to say like, no, add this to the script. Okay, below's an updated the script that prints out possible reasons. Okay, let's see what it does. I'm a little worried about this. Oh, that was terrible. Like this was not good at all. So basically, let me see, right? So basically when they don't match, it just prints the reasons. So this was not good. So if you think like, so what I asked it to do is pretty high level and it kind of failed to take that and put it into code. So I guess we'll have to get more specific. So I said, no, I want you to modify the script to figure out what is different between the input and output directories in order to explain the difference. Since I feel like I have to be specific with this, I'm going to say, I said, please, like I'm trying to be nice to it. Remove the explanation. I said, remove the explanations you just added to the script. Again, like my language is very vague and I'm doing that intentionally to see if it can kind of figure that out. So if the final counts do not match, it performs a comparison between the expected and actual files in the output directory to show precisely which files are missing, which files are extra, great, which output paths have collisions. All right, and did it remove all that text at the end? It did. Good job. So my guess is it has to do with duplicates because I didn't deduplicate any of these files. Like I would normally run the deduplication pass. In this case, I didn't. All right, we have an updated script. Let's just run this again. Collisions, multiple input files map to the same path. Oh, interesting. So yeah. Okay. So we're off by, let's call it 50 files. So this could probably be duplicates, right? That would be my guess. And so you'd probably want to run a deduplication pass first. So yeah, this makes sense. All right, so we got that worked out. Now, why don't we ask it to make sure that the dates make sense? So remember, these dates, it's matching formats to look for the dates. So let's ask it to sanity check those dates. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask it something very generic again, rather than saying like modify the regular expression. I'm just going to and see how it responds. So I said, basically check if they make sense. And if they don't, use the creation date. All right, so it's funny. It added a dates make sense function. A small helper that returns true if the date's year, great. So between 1970 and 2100, it's pretty funny how it was very explicit in taking my input. Where is that function? Dates make sense. Great. You know, I do think it's interesting how it thought about this. Like it didn't think about doing it like as a relative date, like a year from now or a week from now or something else, or today. It hard coded these 2 years, but I think that's fine. It'll work. I'm going to do, and then similar to last time here, I'm going to ask it to show me a diff. All right, here we go. Here's our date makes sense function. And then the additions to, check the date. If it makes, I got it. Otherwise, it checks the creation date. Okay, seems reasonable. And we're going to make one additional change to this script. And we're going to ask it to handle files organized into a directory structure with dates. So if I have, year / month / day, it's going to handle that. So what I said is I basically said modify the script to also look for dates by examining the full file path. And I tried to explain through an example what I'm looking for, but I didn't give it an exact example. So we'll see what it does with that. So if the regular expression doesn't match, it's going to look for year, month, day directories. Fine. Look for a directory structure in this pattern. We'll scan all components in consecutive segments that look like year is 4 digits, month is 2 digits, day is 2 digits. That's pretty good. You can imagine how complicated this gets. Like maybe you have some directories where you're using 2-digit years, 4-digit years, 1 and 2-digit months. So I'm not going to, you can kind of go add those on your own, but pretty cool that it figured out kind of how to do this and how to look at the path for that format. And then it explains how it handles those directory based dates. And it's neat that it kind of brought a couple concepts together. So it splits the path into its directory components, looks for 3 consecutive components that match those patterns. Seems reasonable. Parse those into a valid date. Interesting. And then if it's within the date range, again, and it kind of wrapped in another modification we previously made. Now, the one other thing I'm going to do is, since I understand why we're getting all those collisions, I'm just going to ask it to remove that. So we'll just clean up the script a tiny bit for now, but I do like that functionality. The other thing I could have done is just make that a command line parameter, I guess. Okay, so we have a new script. Let's give it a roll. All right, let's see what we got. Okay, similar set of directories, and let's take a look at, so what I'm interested in is like, let's go back to the input directory and let's find a specific file from like the iPhone format and see how it handled it. All right, so here we have a file that is definitely in this new kind of hierarchy. 2024-0721, and the file name is img3711.jpg. All right, so now we can see where it ended up in both places. So in the original directory, it was in that kind of format, that hierarchical format, and you can see it actually correctly grabbed that, got the year and the month right, and put it into the right place. So nice. Now we're going to ask it to do one other thing. And so we've asked it to organize by date. And so the other thing I want to try doing is I wonder if it can organize files by type. And it would be super cool if it could actually categorize things. So, but I'm going to just say, ask it to organize files by photo and video. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to basically ask it to create 2 sets of output. So basically we'll double the input size. That's okay. I'm going to kind of operate under the assumption that storage is cheap, but we'll see if it can do that. All right, let's give this prompt a try. So you can see I was a little more specific in this one. I said modify the script to organize the input files in 2 ways. The first way is to organize by date, which is what it currently does. The files organized by date should be placed into the output directory in a subdirectory named by date. Next, add a new feature to organize the input files by type, photo and video. Photos should be placed in a subdirectory named photo, videos to a subdirectory named video. All right, so let's just take a quick look at this. I would expect it to basically make 2 passes. So it looks at each of the input files, it figures out the date, and then it figures out the type. Okay, build the date-based destination path and a type-based. Okay, then it does the actual copies, and you can see it does that twice. And it figures out the file type based on extension. So it's not doing anything smart there. All right, let's give this one a try. All right, this is all done, so let's take a look. Okay, cool. So it actually did exactly what I wanted. In the output directory, we have the files organized by date and then photos and videos. Actually, I didn't think about how to organize them within photo and video, so I'm curious what it did. So without going deep, the by date output looks like it would previously. It's just what I would expect. Let's look at photo. There we go. And let's look at video. Great. So good, but not perfect. So it did what we wanted. It organized them by type, but it didn't actually do any of the date organization within kind of the by type folder. So I'll just add that real quick. Let's see if it can add it. Now we have a new script. So rather than belabor this and run it again, I'll just assume that it works. But before we kind of wrap this video up, I'm going to ask this to do one more thing, and we're not going to be able to test it, but I'm kind of curious how it would write the code. Now, so we've gone through the process of like we deduplicated files previously. Now we've organized them a whole bunch of different ways. And you could see how you could expand on this, add all kinds of different organization methods, etc. So I think all up, it's done pretty well. But I am going to ask you one more thing. You know, what'd be really cool is if it categorized the files. Like I would love like, hey, if there's people, places, time, things like that. And so I'm gonna ask it to do that. And I wonder, I could ask it to use a model to do that, or I could just ask it something generic. So here's what I'll do. I will ask it to categorize the files using a machine learning model. We'll see what it comes up with. All right. So organize them by categories. And I did say use a machine learning model. Now this script is going to get really complicated. So it says by category, it used a machine learning model. So the ML logic below is only a placeholder. The snippet demonstrates how you might integrate a classification function. Okay, well, let's just look at the function it added. There's probably a classification function, I think it said. Classify file people place. So it adds dummy. No, I didn't want that. I'm going to say write an actual classification function. Don't make it a dummy. It's weird that it decided to do that. Of course, now it said how you could integrate a real model, but I actually wanted to do the integration. Okay, it uses a pre-trained CNN model that actually classifies images by people or place. Okay, it's a good start. So it uses a pre-trained ResNet model, ResNet 50 trained on ImageNet. Let's take a look. Oh, yeah, cool. Transforms the input, sets up the model. Here's the classification. So it doesn't do video classification and defaults to place. Okay, it only does images. And it passes it to the model and gets a classification out. Okay, we're not going to run this right now, but it's a start. And you can see how you can use this to start to push your scripts further and further. But I also think that's interesting is that it almost seems to be pushing back a little bit. So at first, when I said to use a model, it just wrote a dummy function. I had to ask it again. And now it didn't write the classification model to handle videos. It just punted on that. And I don't know why. I'm going to ask it to classify the videos. So I'll just say use the classification model on images. Just pick a random frame. I don't care. So here's classifying an image. All right, so if it's a video, it opens the video, picks a random frame index, converts it, and classifies. Okay, I'm not going to test that, but that seems reasonable. So what we're going to do is I'm going to leave it here. We've started with a simple script, and we have added something to be pretty complex at this point. But really, my goal here was to show you how you can use ChatGPT to help you out with writing scripts for general tasks. And I will go back to kind of what I said in this. I could never have written this in the amount of time it took to pull this together. Even if this script isn't perfect, I know I couldn't get close. You know, maybe if you're kind of doing this day in and day out as your day job, sure, maybe you could kind of write a script this fast. But for me, I think this is very, very cool technology. It definitely speeds up my workflow a ton, and just kind of wanted to share with you what you can do with it. And I've kind of made this a regular part of what I do when I'm just doing kind of tasks around with different computers, etc. So that's it. I'm curious, like if you are kind of using ChatGPT or any of these other tools to write code, how are you finding it? And what does it do well and not do well? Leave that in the comments below, and we'll see you next time.